Filthy animals like you belong in cages. A white police officer slapped a black woman hard across the face right there on the courthouse steps. Her briefcase burst open, legal documents scattering through the air. Within seconds, cold metal cuffs dug into her wrists. But what the officer didn't know was that he had just picked the wrong woman to bully, and when she returned to that courtroom under her true identity, he would learn a lesson that would cost him his entire career. The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs and the mechanical clicks of phone cameras. A woman sat alone at the defense table, black, mid-40s, dressed in a simple navy suit. The bruise along her jaw had turned from red to purple. Her name was Naomi Carter. She didn't look like a criminal. She looked tired. Across the room, Officer Brian O'Connor stood tall in his uniform, chest out, badge gleaming under the lights. Two other cops, Rodriguez and Hale, leaned back in their seats behind him, sharing the kind of smirk men wear when they already know the ending. The prosecutor, Daniel Walsh, started first. His voice was smooth, confident, the kind of voice juries trusted. "Your Honor, the facts are simple. The defendant attempted to enter the courthouse with falsified legal documents. When approached by Officer O'Connor, she became aggressive, refused to comply, and physically assaulted him." Naomi stared down at her hands. The bruise on her wrist pulsed where the metal cuffs had dug in hours earlier. Every word he said scraped against her skin. Judge Miles adjusted his glasses. He looked like every judge in every courthouse, white, tired, and convinced he'd already heard it all. "Officer O'Connor," he said, "go ahead." O'Connor stepped forward with the easy arrogance of a man who'd told this story before. "She was yelling, wouldn't give ID, tried to push past me. I used minimal force to detain her. She kept shouting that she was someone important." The room stirred. Someone laughed quietly. Naomi didn't move. Rodriguez muttered something under his breath. "Always thinking they're special," Hale snorted. "Yeah, and when it goes south it's always race this, race that. Nobody told them to stop." O'Connor kept going. "I've been doing courthouse security 15 years. You learn to spot trouble. She had a fake ID badge, cheap print, wrong laminate. My gut told me something wasn't right." The prosecutor smiled as if the case had already been won. "Officer O'Connor has received multiple commendations for bravery and community service, Your Honor." Naomi felt her jaw tighten. Community service. The same community he'd been terrorizing for years. The judge turned to her. "Miss Carter, do you have an attorney present?" "No, Your Honor." "Then I advise you to request one." "That won't be necessary," she said quietly. "I'll represent myself." Rodriguez chuckled. "Here we go," he whispered. Naomi lifted her eyes. They were calm, almost detached. "The officer's statement contains several inaccuracies," she said. "I'd like to clarify them." The judge exhaled through his nose. "Miss Carter, this isn't a cross-examination." "No," she said. "But it's my life on the line. That seems worth clarifying." A few heads turned. The prosecutor frowned. "Miss Carter, this isn't about your feelings. This is about facts." "Good," Naomi said. "Let's talk about facts." She turned toward O'Connor. "You said I was aggressive. Did I hit you?" He didn't answer. "Did I curse at you? Threaten you?" Silence. "So what exactly made me aggressive?" Walking up courthouse steps while black. The room froze. Gasps rippled through the benches. O'Connor's expression changed. Just a flicker, but she saw it. The flash of something mean behind the uniform. "So now it's a race thing, huh?" he said, voice dripping with disdain. "You people love that one." Naomi's stomach clenched, but her face didn't move. She'd heard those words before, too many times to count. The prosecutor stepped in quickly. "Miss Carter, accusing an officer of racism is a serious claim. Let's stay professional." His tone was sharp, patronizing. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The entire room had already decided who they believed. A familiar pressure built in her chest right beneath her ribs. It wasn't fear. It was memory, alive and sharp, crawling up from the morning. The sound of laughter. The sting on her face. The weight of a hand forcing her down. Her pulse slowed. The courtroom faded. O'Connor's smirk blurred into sunlight. The judge's voice dissolved into wind. The murmur of spectators melted into the echo of a man's voice, colder, closer. "Courthouses for real people, sweetheart. Not strays like you." The words slammed back into her mind like a door hitting her chest. Her breath caught. Her fingers curled tight around the edge of the table. For a moment she wasn't sitting in a courtroom anymore. She was back on the courthouse steps, the taste of blood still fresh on her tongue. And that's where it began. The sunlight was too bright that morning. The kind of sharp, merciless glare that made every flaw in the world visible. It burned across the marble of the Atlanta Federal Courthouse, reflecting off the bronze seal above the entrance, United States District Court. The air was thick already, humming with heat and the low drone of morning traffic. The faint smell of exhaust and old asphalt clung to the steps like grease. Naomi Carter climbed slowly, one hand balancing a coffee, the other clutching a black leather briefcase heavy with sealed folders stamped confidential. Federal Civil Rights Review. She'd spent months buried in those files. Witness statements, police reports, audio transcripts no one in power wanted to hear. The kind of documents that exposed how deep the rot went. It wasn't even 8 yet, but the pavement already shimmered with heat. At the top of the stairs, leaning against the railing, stood a uniformed cop, white, mid-30s, clean haircut, squared jaw, toothpick between his teeth. His badge gleamed. His eyes didn't. Officer Brian O'Connor. He watched her climb, lips curling into that lazy smirk worn by men who never expect to be challenged. "Whoa there," he said, pushing off the railing. "Courthouse doesn't open to the public till 9, sweetheart. Deliveries go around back." Naomi adjusted the strap on her briefcase. "I'm not a delivery." "Sure you're not." His tone dripped mockery. "What is it today? Social services? Free housing seminar? Or maybe one of those diversity training gigs? You people love those." Her shoulders stiffened, but she didn't stop walking. "I work here," she said evenly. "I have clearance." He let out a short, ugly laugh. "You work here, doing what? Janitorial? Cafeteria? HR's gotta hit those diversity numbers somehow, huh?" He eyed her slowly, head to toe, the neat curls, the dark skin, the pressed navy suit, and smiled like he'd solved a puzzle. "No offense, but people like you don't usually run the show in buildings like this." Naomi's jaw tightened. "Please move, I have a meeting." The word made him grin wider. "A meeting? Well, ain't that cute? Let me guess, sensitivity training. Or maybe a complaint about how hard life is in the ghetto." He laughed, the sound harsh and deliberate. "Should have brought your protest sign." She stepped forward, intent on brushing past. His arm shot out, blocking her path. Not a gentle stop, a warning. His tone dropped. "I said the building's closed, ma'am. And I said I work here." The smirk vanished. His eyes went flat. "You don't talk to me like that." Naomi reached calmly into her bag, producing her federal ID. "Here, my clearance." O'Connor snatched it, turned it over once, then let it drop. The plastic badge clinked against marble. "Fake," he said. "Cute font though." "It's not fake," he grinned, stepping closer until she could smell the bitter coffee on his breath. "Then why's your face on it, huh? 10 points for Photoshop skills." "A judge, huh?" "Yeah, and I'm the damn Pope." From below, another officer, Rodriguez, called up. "Yo, O'Connor, what's going on?" "Got ourselves a situation," O'Connor yelled back. "Some lady thinks she can just walk into federal property like she's running the place. Probably one of those woke activists looking for attention." Naomi bent to pick up her badge. That's when it happened. The slap came out of nowhere, open palm, hard, loud. The sound cracked through the morning air like a whip. Her head snapped sideways, the coffee cup flew from her hand. Her briefcase burst open, papers spilling across the stairs, affidavits, legal transcripts, federal records scattering like a snowstorm of truth. "Hey," she gasped, staggering back. He caught her arm, spun her around, slammed her against the wall. The stone bit into her shoulder. "Another crime," he hissed. "Littering federal property. Let go of me. Don't tell me what to do." His mouth was right next to her ear. "You people never learn respect." 2 more officers appeared at the top of the steps, Rodriguez and Hale, both white, both grinning. "What we got?" Rodriguez asked, phone already up, recording. "Got us a trespasser," O'Connor said, loud enough for the gathering crowd. "Claims she works here." Look at this, fake badge, fake papers, probably some activist stunt. Hell, Hale said, she even dressed up for it. Guess the welfare checks are getting generous. Naomi's voice was hoarse. Those are legal documents. Please, O'Connor twisted her arm higher, until her shoulder screamed. She cried out. Legal documents, he mocked. What are you, a lawyer now? Maybe a judge. Rodriguez barked a laugh. Yeah, maybe in her neighborhood court. Judge of the block party. O'Connor leaned close again, his voice dropping to a cruel whisper. Listen to me, lady. You don't walk into my courthouse pretending you belong. You see this badge? This uniform? That means I decide who gets in, and who gets dragged out. You're hurting me, she said, breathless. Good. His tone softened, almost conversational. Maybe that'll teach you not to mouth off. You people think a suit and a fancy vocabulary make you better. But you'll always be what you are. He spat the next word like venom. Trash. A crowd had gathered now. Office clerks, tourists, a security guard pretending not to see. Phones were out, but no one stepped forward. Damn, someone muttered. What'd she do? Who cares, another said. Cops don't hit for no reason. Rodriguez raised his voice to the bystanders. Nothing to see, folks, just another one trying to play victim. Happens every week. O'Connor snapped the cuffs around Naomi's wrists, the metal dug deep. She winced but didn't speak. Filthy animals like you belong in cages, he said, his tone cold, satisfied. Not courthouses. The words hit harder than the blow. Naomi's vision blurred, not from tears but from fury. She'd written legal opinions about officers like him. She'd studied their cases, condemned their behavior. Now she was living inside one of those reports. Officer, she said slowly, steady despite the sting in her voice. You're making a serious mistake. He laughed, a short, cruel laugh. Sweetheart, the mistake was letting you anywhere near this building. You think you belong because you watched a few episodes of Law and Order. Rodriguez grinned. Maybe she thought the Black Lives Matter parade was meeting here. Yeah, Hale added, chuckling. Bet she thought she'd get inside if she just smiled enough. O'Connor yanked her forward toward the patrol car parked at the curb. Her heel snapped on the pavement. Figures, he muttered. Can't even walk straight without tripping over yourself. She stumbled, caught herself, lifted her head. And that's when she saw it, the bronze nameplate above the courthouse door, glowing in the harsh sunlight. The Honorable Judge Naomi Carter, Courtroom 2A. Her name, her title, her 20 years of work, right there 10 feet away. And not one of them looked. The cuffs clicked tight. O'Connor shoved her into the back seat. Another ghetto rat trying to sneak in where she doesn't belong. He muttered. I swear they never learn. He slammed the door. Through the window, Naomi saw her briefcase lying open on the courthouse steps, pages fluttering in the hot Atlanta wind, the truth scattering like ashes across a city still pretending not to see her. The sound of her own breath pulled her back. Naomi blinked. The sunlight, the shouting, the sting of handcuffs, gone. Fluorescent light pressed against her eyelids, the air reeked of paper, sweat, and disinfectant. O'Connor was still talking. And I exercised restraint, Your Honor. Could have gone worse. Frankly, I think I saved her from herself. His voice rolled through the courtroom like smoke, calm, confident, designed to sound reasonable even as it poisoned the air. He stood tall, squared shoulders beneath his pressed uniform, the badge catching the light like a medal. His hand brushed the holster at his hip, not touching, just enough to remind everyone what kind of man he was. He looked like order, she looked like trouble, that was all they needed. The defendant, he said, savoring the word, was yelling obscenities outside the courthouse, waving her arms, approaching bystanders aggressively. I made several verbal commands, all ignored. When I attempted to de-escalate, she became combative. Laughter rippled faintly from somewhere in the back, a reporter's pen scratched across paper. Naomi's hands stayed flat on the polished wood, her nails dug faint crescents into her palms. The prosecutor, Walsh, stood now, pale, clean-cut, and perfectly aligned with the system that raised him. Officer O'Connor, when you say combative, Could you clarify, did she strike you? A pause, calculated. She made a sudden movement toward her bag. I feared for my safety. He turned slightly toward the audience, his face composed in the tragic dignity of a man forced to do something unpleasant for the greater good. And when I restrained her, she began screaming that I was targeting her. I'm sure it was stressful for her, but I can't let accusations of racism dictate my duty. That word, racism, dropped like a stone into water. Heads tilted. Pens paused. Naomi looked up. She wanted to speak, to tell them she had only reached for her phone, to show them the bruises still blooming on her wrist. Finish, he was rewriting her life in real time. O'Connor continued, his voice smooth, almost paternal. I understand tensions are high these days. People see a badge, and they assume hostility. But I treat everyone the same. If anyone, behaved the way she did, I'd respond exactly the same. Anyone. Naomi murmured under her breath. Walsh didn't miss it. He smiled thinly, turning to the judge. Your Honor, it's clear the defendant has a pattern of hostility. We've submitted prior footage of her disrupting a city council meeting last year. Similar tone. Same disregard for authority. That video, it was taken out of context, she whispered. He didn't look at her. Don't speak. O'Connor folded his arms, adopting a stance of weary patience. I've spent my career protecting this city. I've dealt with protesters, agitators, drug dealers. His eyes flicked to her. People who think the rules don't apply to them. It's not about color, it's about conduct. The lie shone clean and perfect. Someone in the gallery muttered, always a victim. A few quiet chuckles followed. Naomi's throat tightened, her pulse slowed, too steady, too quiet, like the silence before a break. She saw the way they looked at her, the jurors shifting in their seats, the judge rubbing his temple, the bailiff smirking just slightly at the corner of his mouth. They weren't listening for truth, they were listening for permission. Officer, the judge said, pen tapping against his notes, did you at any point use excessive force? No, Your Honor. I followed standard procedure. If anything, I held back. She was shouting racial slurs, calling me, he hesitated, just enough to seem humble, certain names that I won't repeat in this courtroom. A collective gasp murmured through the audience. Naomi's lawyer stood halfway. Objection, that's withdrawn. O'Connor said smoothly, raising his hand. I don't want to add more negativity to this environment. The judge nodded approvingly. Appreciated, officer. That kind of composure is commendable. Naomi's mouth opened, but her voice didn't come. The words tangled in her chest, heavy and useless. She wasn't on trial for an action anymore. She was on trial for existing. Miss Carter, Walsh said suddenly, his tone syrupy and false, you claim you were assaulted without provocation, but multiple witnesses describe you as agitated. One said you were out of control, another said you lunged. Do you dispute all of that? She started to speak, but Walsh cut him off. Actually, let her answer. I'm curious. Every eye in the room turned to her. The air in the room thickened. Everyone heard what he didn't say. Walsh adjusted his tie, stepping closer to the bench. Exactly, Your Honor. Officer O'Connor has served this community with distinction. One misunderstanding shouldn't tarnish a record like his. Naomi's lips curved slightly, a ghost of something that wasn't quite a smile. They always called it a misunderstanding. Judge Miles scribbled something down, eyes never meeting hers. Miss Carter, he said finally. If you have any final remarks before I make my ruling, now would be the time. The ceiling fans droned faintly above. A camera clicked in the gallery. Someone coughed. Naomi rose, slowly, silently. No shaking hands, no trembling voice, just the kind of stillness that made people uneasy without knowing why. She adjusted her blazer and met the judge's eyes. Yes, Your Honor, she said. I do. Miles sighed, already sounding tired. Briefly, please. Of course, her voice carried across the courtroom, calm, deliberate, surgical. The kind of calm that didn't ask for silence but commanded it. I've sat here and listened to Officer O'Connor describe events that didn't happen, she began. her tone low but steady, using words he's clearly rehearsed: aggressive, erratic, combative. The same adjectives that appear in police reports every time someone needs to justify unnecessary force. A low murmur rippled through the benches. Someone in the back whispered, "Damn," before being shushed. Naomi continued. "He said I refused to provide ID. That's false. I handed it to him. He threw it down the steps. He said my documents were forged. They were sealed federal case files. He said he used minimal force. The medical report disagrees." Her words were measured. No shouting, no theatrics, but each syllable struck like a gavel. O'Connor shifted in his chair, jaw tightening, the confidence in his posture flickering for the first time. Naomi's eyes flicked toward him briefly, then back to the judge. "You've heard this pattern before," she said. "A white officer claims he was provoked. The black victim becomes the aggressor. The system shrugs and moves on." The prosecutor opened his mouth. "Your Honor, you'll have your turn," she said sharply, without looking his way. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to slice the air in half. She reached down, unlatched her briefcase, the same one that had burst open across the courthouse steps that morning, and set a small flash drive on the table. "I'd like to enter something into evidence before we end this farce," she said. "Exhibit A." The courtroom seemed to lean in. Judge Miles blinked, his pen still hovering over the pad. "What is it?" "Security footage." Naomi replied. "Exterior courthouse cameras, automatically archived every 12 hours. The words fell like a stone into still water, soft but heavy, rippling through every row of seats. Walsh straightened, voice sharpening. "Objection, Your Honor. We received no advance disclosure of this. You didn't ask for discovery." Naomi said flatly, "Your oversight, not mine." Before the judge could respond, the courtroom doors opened. The hinges creaked, a quiet, deliberate sound that made everyone turn. A uniformed officer entered, holding a sealed manila envelope and a small black external drive. Gray hair, steady posture, badge polished bright. "Officer Henderson, Chief of Internal Security." The bailiff stepped forward, confused. "Chief Henderson." Henderson nodded once. "Apologies for the interruption, Your Honor. I have here a verified copy of the courthouse surveillance footage from this morning. Time stamped between 7:48 and 8:06 a.m. The room froze. Naomi didn't move. O'Connor's smirk vanished entirely. Judge Miles blinked. "You're confirming this independently?" "Yes, sir," Henderson said. He held up a stamped document. "This is the emergency preservation order I filed at 8:37 a.m. after witnessing part of the incident myself. The footage was automatically backed up to the courthouse network at 9 a.m. and I secured a verified copy for evidentiary review." He stepped forward, handed the envelope and drive to the bailiff. The papers bore the seal of the Federal Judicial Security Office, official, undeniable. O'Connor shot to his feet. "This is insane. He's not part of this hearing." Henderson turned his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "I am now, officer. You made it my jurisdiction the moment you laid hands on a person outside this courthouse." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Naomi's gaze met Henderson's for a brief second. No smile, no nod, just silent understanding. "Thank you, Chief," she said softly. "Any time, Judge," he replied, before catching himself, realizing the weight of that word, and adding quickly, "Miss Carter." That tiny slip, Judge, made half the room glance up, uncertain if they'd heard it right. Walsh raised a hand again. "Your Honor, I object to the use of unverified." "Counselor," Naomi said, without raising her voice, "if you were half as diligent in reviewing evidence as you are in defending misconduct, we wouldn't be here." Gasps rippled from the benches, a mix of disbelief and something close to satisfaction. Judge Miles frowned, caught between authority and fear. His pen hovered mid-air. Let's see what's on the footage first," he murmured. The bailiff inserted the flash drive into the monitor. The lights dimmed slightly, the screen flickered, static, then clarity, grainy black and white, the courthouse steps. Empty at first, then Naomi, climbing, calm, briefcase in hand. A pause, then O'Connor entered the frame, coffee cup in one hand, his badge glinting. His body language was unmistakable. Cocky, predatory, relaxed like he owned the world. He leaned forward, blocking her path. His mouth moved fast, too fast. The audio picked up snatches of his words, the venom in his tone cutting through even the low fidelity. "What's the matter, sweetheart? Lost your welfare check? Didn't know they let you people this close to the marble steps." A wave of murmurs swept through the gallery. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." Then Naomi's head turned slightly. The arm flashed up, the slap. It landed with the kind of sound that doesn't need clarity. The kind that vibrates in your chest. The courtroom flinched collectively. Naomi didn't move, she just said, "Pause." The bailiff froze the frame. O'Connor's hand, mid-swing, his face twisted with casual contempt. "That," Naomi said evenly, "is the minimal force Officer O'Connor described." Her tone was quiet, surgical. Every syllable felt like a blade turned in open air. Walsh half rose again, voice uncertain. "Your Honor, this footage, this could easily be misinterpreted." Miles lifted a trembling hand. "Sit down, counselor," the video resumed. The next frame, O'Connor shoving her against the wall, Rodriguez laughing. Hale recording. Over the tinny bodycam mic, came more, louder, meaner, the mask fully gone. "You think that suit makes you somebody? Don't talk back to me, girl. I've been cleaning trash like you off these steps for years. Filthy animals like you belong in cages, not courthouses." The words hit like a slap themselves. The sound bounced off the marble walls, and the room gasped again. Louder this time, someone cursed. A woman near the back started crying softly. Even the fluorescent light seemed to dim under the weight of it. Naomi stood still, her expression unreadable, calm carved from something unbreakable. She waited for the audio to finish, then said softly, "Pause." O'Connor's frozen image filled the screen, his sneer, the vein bulging in his neck, the exact moment arrogance met evidence. Naomi turned to the judge. "That's not protocol, Your Honor," she said. "That's prejudice. Caught on camera." The prosecutor stared at his desk, pretending to read notes that weren't there. No one moved. The room felt like a held breath. Naomi's voice stayed level. "You told me this morning," she said, "that people like me don't belong in courthouses." She stepped forward, closing the distance between her and O'Connor's table. Her shoes clicked sharply against the tile, each step deliberate, echoing. "You were right about one thing," she said, stopping just short of him. "This courthouse doesn't belong to people like you." Her gaze met his calm, meeting panic. O'Connor's face was pale now, beads of sweat forming near his hairline. His mouth opened once, twice, as if searching for the right lie. Then it came. The instinctive defense, desperate, ugly, familiar. "You think this little video means something?" He spat. His voice was louder now, cracking. "You edited it. You people always edit the truth to make yourselves look like victims." The room tensed. "You people," Naomi repeated quietly. He pushed forward, the mask slipping fast. "Yeah, you heard me. I've seen your kind mouthin' off, playin' smart, thinkin' you're better than everyone else because you learned a few big words." He jabbed a finger toward her. "Where I come from, you don't talk to cops like that. You don't talk unless you're told." "Officer," Judge Miles began, his voice wavering. "That's enough." But O'Connor kept going, his words tumbling out in raw panic. "You want to make this about race? Fine. Half the people we arrest look like you. And guess what? They all say the same damn thing. I didn't do it." Then they cry racism when the cuffs come out. A collective intake of breath swept the courtroom. Naomi didn't flinch. Her tone stayed calm, razor sharp. "Impersonate what, officer?" she asked, her voice low but cutting. "Competence, authority, or simply equality?" O'Connor sneered, the last of his composure unraveling. "You think you're equal, lady, you got lucky. That badge," he gestured vaguely toward her briefcase. "That title, that's charity. You're just a quota with lipstick." Gasps. Someone shouted, "Jesus Christ," from the back. Walsh put his face in his hands. Judge Miles looked as though he wanted to vanish behind the bench. Naomi's silence stretched. Then she spoke, measured, clear, almost cold. "That," she said, "was the truest thing you've said all day." She turned toward the bench. "Your Honor, I request that the court formally preserve all surveillance and bodycam footage from this morning as evidence." Judge Miles' voice was barely a whisper. "Granted." Naomi nodded once. "Good," she said quietly. "Then we can proceed properly." She turned back to O'Connor. "Because now, officer," she said, "your words are on record too." He froze, realizing too late that the court reporter had never stopped typing. Every slur, every justification, every word would live forever in transcript. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was the sound of power shifting, the kind of silence that feels like justice beginning to breathe. When Naomi Carter returned, the room didn't recognize her at first. The doors swung open softly, no fanfare, no sound but the slow, deliberate echo of her heels crossing the tile floor. The hum of conversation died in waves. One by one heads turned. She wasn't in her navy suit anymore. She wore black judicial robes, the gold-embroidered seal of the United States District Court glinting under the fluorescent light. The robe itself seemed to change the air, heavier now, commanding. The kind of silence that happens when people realize they've misjudged everything. Someone in the back whispered, "Is that?" Another voice followed, hushed and terrified. "Wait, that's her." Judge Miles, who had been nervously flipping through his notes, froze. His pen slipped from his fingers, hitting the desk with a small hollow tap. Naomi reached the front of the courtroom, her posture effortless, regal, every step radiating the calm authority of someone who no longer had to prove anything. She looked up at him. "Thank you, Judge Miles," she said evenly. "You can return to your chambers now." He blinked confused. "I beg your pardon." "You're relieved," she said, effective immediately. Her voice didn't waver, but there was something in it, a gravity that made the air hum. The gallery rose instinctively, almost as if pulled by an unseen string. The bailiff turned, hesitant, eyes wide. "Bailiff," she said quietly, "announce the court properly." He hesitated, then swallowed hard. "All rise." He drew a shaky breath. "The United States District Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Naomi Carter presiding." The words hit the room like thunder. O'Connor's face went blank. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Rodriguez whispered, "Holy shit." The prosecutor, Walsh, went pale, his hand gripping the table edge for balance. Naomi stepped behind the bench, her bench, and laid her hands on the polished wood. It was the same bench she'd ruled from for 12 years, but that morning, it felt like a weapon forged from patience. She glanced up at the seal of the court, then down at O'Connor. "Officer O'Connor," she said softly, "please rise." He didn't. Rodriguez nudged him, and his chair screeched against the tile as he stumbled upright, eyes darting like a trapped animal's. Naomi's tone remained measured. "This morning, you claimed that a woman attacked you while trespassing on federal property." She paused. "That woman was me." Gasps rippled through the gallery. A journalist in the back dropped his notepad. Naomi continued, voice steady as steel. "You assaulted a sitting federal judge on the steps of her own courthouse. You lied under oath. You falsified a report. You disgraced your badge, your oath, and this institution." O'Connor's throat bobbed. "Your Honor, I didn't know. You didn't care to know," she said, cutting through his plea like a blade. "Because you didn't look. You saw a black woman in plain clothes and decided what she was worth." Silence. The kind that made people hold their breath without realizing it. Naomi turned toward the large courtroom screen. "Bailiff, replay the footage from this morning. All of it." The monitor flickered to life. O'Connor's body filled the frame, his hand raised, his voice booming. The slap, the shove, the sneer. "Filthy animals like you belong in cages." Someone in the gallery whispered, "Oh my God." Another muttered, "He actually said it." Naomi's gaze never left him. "You said that within 20 feet of a plaque bearing my name." She clicked a remote. Another video appeared, this one from Officer Hale's body cam. The laughter filled the speakers. "Yo Brian, she's really crying. Damn, this one's gonna go viral." "Yeah." O'Connor's voice came dripping with cruelty. "Let's call it equal rights in action." The laughter that followed sounded like something from another world, detached, monstrous. When it ended, Naomi pressed pause again. "You're right about one thing, officer," she said quietly. "I do own this place, not because of my skin, because of my work, because of the law, because I earned it." Her words were calm, almost soft, but the entire courtroom seemed to tremble. Then she reached for a thick folder marked "Confidential, DOJ Internal Affairs." She placed it on the bench, flipping it open with deliberate precision. "For the record," she said. I've been overseeing a federal inquiry into systemic misconduct within this city's police department for the past 6 months, in collaboration with the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division and the FBI's Behavioral Integrity Task Force. No one moved. The oxygen felt thinner. During that time, she continued, we've gathered thousands of pages of records, disciplinary files, complaint transcripts, sealed testimonies from whistleblowers inside your department. She turned a page. And Officer O'Connor, your name appears in every single one. He swayed slightly, his face gone chalk white. She lifted a printed page from the file and began to read, each line like a verdict. 47 official complaints filed during your tenure, 15 for excessive force, 28 for racial profiling, 4 for falsified evidence, all dismissed under insufficient proof. She dropped the page onto the pile. Until now, the courtroom buzzed with low murmurs. Reporters started writing frantically. Naomi didn't stop. Internal Affairs attempted to reopen your file twice. Both attempts were blocked by your supervising lieutenant, who, for the record, resigned last week under federal subpoena. O'Connor's knees buckled slightly. I was just following orders, he muttered, his voice cracking. Naomi leaned forward, eyes locked on his. Your orders don't absolve your intent. She turned back to the gallery. 3 months ago, we installed a pilot system inside this courthouse, an automated upload from every officer's body cam who steps onto federal property. That's how we got your footage. Not because of you, but because you made the mistake of stepping into federal jurisdiction. A ripple of shock spread across the room. Walsh, the prosecutor, ran a hand through his hair, muttering, Jesus Christ. Naomi's tone never changed. You see, officer, you weren't just being recorded this morning. You were under observation. She lifted another file, stamped FBI, CRD Field Unit 42. Agent Alvarez and his team have spent 6 months tracing complaint falsifications, planted evidence, and internal cover-ups tied directly to your precinct. 43 cases to be exact. 28 of them involved minority defendants. 17 resulted in wrongful convictions. The sound of pens stopped. Even the journalists had gone still. Naomi glanced toward the back. Agent Alvarez, a man in a dark suit, stood up from the rear bench, calm, quiet, unmistakably federal. He held a folder and a small recording device. For the record, Naomi said, please confirm that the Department of Justice has received full cooperation from this court. The agent nodded once. Confirmed, Your Honor. The evidence package was delivered at 9:15 a.m. this morning. O'Connor's mouth opened, but no words came. His lips trembled, as if his brain couldn't form excuses fast enough. Naomi turned another page. Your history speaks for itself. You called a 63-year-old grandmother a spick during a traffic stop in 2009. You falsified narcotics evidence against a 17-year-old honors student in 2012. Both complaints disappeared. O'Connor whispered, those were decades ago. And yet, Naomi said quietly, the behavior didn't change. It just found a better disguise. She reached for a second file, labeled Data Analysis, Race and Force Comparison. Statistical review shows that you used physical force in 63% of arrests involving people of color, compared to 11% involving white suspects. That's not training. That's a pattern. The gallery buzzed louder now. Anger, shock, disbelief. Naomi closed the folder gently. For months, we've been trying to expose that pattern. And today you gave us exactly what we needed, on camera, in front of witnesses, under oath. She turned to the bailiff. Officer, please take Mr. O'Connor into custody pending transfer to federal authorities. The bailiff hesitated, eyes darting between Naomi and O'Connor. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Now, she said. The man moved. The sound of metal cuffs clinking shut echoed through the courtroom like punctuation. The same cuffs O'Connor had clamped around her wrists that morning. He flinched at the sound. I was just doing my job, he whispered. Naomi leaned forward, resting her hands on the bench. Your job, she said, was to protect the law, not to hide behind it. The words landed softly, but the meaning hit like a hammer. She let the silence stretch, letting every person in the room feel the weight of what had just happened. And now, Officer O'Connor, she said finally, her voice low and even. "You'll learn something every judge learns eventually." She paused. "Actions have consequences." The bailiff guided him toward the door. Reporters whispered like a rising tide. Cameras clicked. Someone in the back started to cry. Maybe from shock, maybe from relief. Naomi sat back down slowly, her robe folding perfectly around her shoulders. Her face showed nothing, no triumph, no vengeance, only composure so steady it felt ancient. Justice didn't shout that day. It didn't need to. It simply spoke, and the world listened. O'Connor was gone, but the silence he left behind stayed heavy in the room. No one moved. No one even breathed. Naomi Carter sat at the bench, hands folded, her black robes absorbing the harsh courtroom light. The prosecutor cleared his throat. "Your Honor, with all due respect, we weren't informed of any federal involvement in this case." Naomi's eyes shifted to him, calm and unblinking. "That's because you weren't supposed to be. This investigation has been sealed for 6 months under joint order from the Department of Justice and the FBI's Civil Rights Division." She reached for another file from her briefcase, thicker worn edges marked with years of bureaucratic fingerprints. It was labeled Atlanta Police Department, Internal Review Pattern of Misconduct. She opened it and began reading, her voice level, deliberate. Officer Brian O'Connor, 15-year veteran, 47 official complaints, 22 use of force incidents, 4 fatal, not a single sustained charge. Each sentence dropped like stone into water. Out of those 47 complaints, she continued, 38 were filed by black citizens, 2 by Hispanic, none by white. No one in the courtroom spoke. The only sound was the slow shuffle of paper as she turned to the next page. "You want statistics," she said quietly. "Here they are. 87% of his arrests involved people of color. 63% of those arrests involved physical violence. 12 of them resulted in hospitalization, 3 in death." She looked up at the prosecutor. "Tell me, counselor, how many of those victims ever saw a courtroom like this one?" He didn't answer. His face had gone pale. Naomi set the file down and gestured to the bailiff. "Bring in the next drive, please." The man hurried forward, plugging in another flash drive. The monitor flickered again, new footage, new angle. This time it wasn't just O'Connor, it was all of them. Body cam compilations, station hallway cameras, parking lot security footage, officers laughing, kicking handcuffed suspects, racial slurs thrown around like punctuation. One video showed O'Connor posing for a photo beside a bleeding teenager on the ground. "Take a good look," Naomi said quietly. "This is your department. These are your officers. This is what community services looks like when no one's watching." People in the gallery covered their mouths. Someone started crying. She clicked again. A second screen came up. Spreadsheets, graphs, bar charts, FBI audit data filled the monitors. "This," she said, "is 6 months of federal analysis. 432 arrests reviewed, 174 dismissed due to constitutional violations, 43 cases overturned, over $2 million in settlements." She turned to the audience. "That's not bad luck. That's a pattern." Her voice sharpened, the steel underneath the calm finally showing. "A pattern of racial bias, a pattern of intimidation, a pattern that's been protected by silence, by politics, by paperwork, and by people in this very building." The prosecutor tried to object, but his voice broke before the word could leave his throat. Naomi didn't look at him. She pulled another envelope from the stack and laid it flat on the bench. "This document is a DOJ authorization for full federal oversight of the Atlanta Police Department, signed by U.S. Attorney General Deborah Keene, dated last week." A stunned murmur rippled through the room. "The reason for the delay," she continued, "was waiting for one final piece of evidence. We needed an officer caught in the act. We needed irrefutable proof that the rot wasn't theoretical. And this morning Officer O'Connor delivered it in high definition." The gallery broke, reporters scribbling, flashes of cameras, the low electric sound of shock turning into outrage. Naomi raised her voice slightly, not loud, just enough to command the noise. "Let's be very clear," she said. "This isn't one bad cop. This is a department culture, built on fear, fed by prejudice, and funded by the taxes of the people it targets." She picked up the microphone in front of her, speaking directly for the record. "Effective immediately, the Atlanta Police Department is placed under federal review. Every complaint, every use of force report, Every case Officer O'Connor touched will be reopened. Every officer involved in misconduct will face prosecution. She let the silence fall again. Justice doesn't stop at one man, she said. It goes where the infection spreads. A movement in the back caught her attention. Rodriguez, the officer who had laughed the loudest that morning, stood up suddenly. "Judge, that's not fair. We didn't do anything." Naomi's gaze froze in mid-sentence. "You filmed it. You laughed. You did nothing. You helped it happen." Rodriguez sank back into his seat. Hale stared at the floor. Naomi exhaled slowly. "You all took an oath," she said, "to protect the public, to uphold the Constitution, not to decide who deserves it." Her tone softened, but it carried deeper than any shout could have. "This building stands on the promise that everyone is equal under the law. Today that promise was broken on its own steps. But starting now, it will be repaired, brick by brick, badge by badge." The last line hung in the air like a closing argument delivered to history itself. Then she leaned back, adjusted her robes and said simply, "This court will recess until the U.S. Attorney arrives, but make no mistake, this trial has already begun." And with that, she stood turned, and walked out of the courtroom. No applause, no chaos, just the sound of justice shifting, slow, heavy, unstoppable. The door hadn't even closed behind Naomi when the room began to unravel. Reporters shouted questions, the prosecutor argued with the bailiff, and Rodriguez kept muttering, "She can't do this, she can't do this," but she could. When Naomi returned, she wasn't holding a gavel, she didn't need one. The entire courtroom was already under her control. She walked back to the bench, adjusted her robe, and nodded to the clerk. "We'll resume session," she said simply. The noise died instantly. Naomi opened another folder, a thin unassuming file stamped I Internal Affairs, Confidential. She placed it on the bench and looked directly at Rodriguez and Hale. "Officers," she said, "please stand." They hesitated. She didn't repeat herself. They stood. Her eyes were steady, the kind of calm that made people sweat. "Your names appear on 8 of the 47 complaints filed against Officer O'Connor. 3 involve use of force, 2 involve falsified statements, and 1 involves a juvenile who was hospitalized." Rodriguez started shaking his head. "Judge, that's all paperwork. None of that was proven." "You're right," Naomi said, "because O'Connor wrote the reports, and your supervisors signed them. That's what corruption looks like when it's wearing a uniform." Rodriguez's jaw tightened. "We were following orders." "So was he," she said quietly. Silence again. It wasn't just a pause, it was a verdict. Naomi lifted another sheet. "Hale," she continued, "you've been cited for tampering with evidence. The same footage that mysteriously disappeared from your department drive 3 days after an arrest turned fatal. Do you recall that incident?" "I didn't delete anything," Hale blurted. "You're right," Naomi said. "You didn't. You texted O'Connor to do it for you." The screen lit up with a screenshot. Text messages appeared in bold letters for the entire court to see. "Delete the last 30 seconds, bro. Don't need another IA headache." A gasp swept through the room. Hale sat down, face drained of color. Naomi's tone remained level. "You both had choices. You chose silence. You chose laughter. You chose to protect your own comfort instead of your oath." Rodriguez tried again, desperate. "Judge, come on. We're not monsters. We just did what we were told." Naomi didn't raise her voice. "Then maybe the problem isn't just you. Maybe it's what you were taught." She looked out across the room. Rows of officers, city officials, lawyers. Every system has 2 kinds of people: those who break the rules, and those who look away when it happens. One group causes damage, the other makes sure it lasts. Her words echoed like slow thunder through the marble chamber. "For 15 years this department has been bleeding trust. People call 911 and hope the person who shows up isn't one of you. Mothers teach their sons how not to die during a traffic stop. And every time a complaint is buried, another child grows up knowing the rules aren't the same for everyone." The audience had gone completely still. Even the reporters had stopped writing. Naomi turned to the bailiff. "Read the next exhibit." The bailiff unfolded a document, voice shaking slightly. "Department of Justice Report. Projected financial impact of misconduct settlements from 2010 to present $8.7 million. Average cost per case $202,000. Funding source city taxpayers. Naomi nodded. You didn't just violate rights, she said. You stole from the people you swore to protect. She took a breath, the first visible sign of wear since the morning began. For years I've watched this department drag its feet every time justice tried to move forward. You stonewalled complaints, intimidated witnesses, and lied under oath. But today, you ran out of places to hide. Rodriguez looked ready to speak again, but Naomi lifted her hand, a quiet command to stop. Officer Rodriguez, Officer Hale, you are hereby suspended from duty, and will face federal charges for conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Bailiff, escort them out. The two men exchanged helpless glances as the bailiff moved forward. The metallic click of handcuffs filled the silence. As they were led past her, Rodriguez whispered, "You think you've won, they'll replace us. Nothing changes." Naomi didn't even look at him. "Then I'll still be here when they do." He stopped for a fraction of a second, then lowered his head and kept walking. When the doors closed behind them, Naomi spoke again, quieter now, but with more weight than ever. "This isn't about vengeance," she said. "It's about truth. Truth doesn't die when you ignore it. It waits, and when it's ready, it comes back stronger than the lies that tried to bury it." Her gaze swept over the courtroom, prosecutors, officers, reporters, citizens. "That's what's happening here. This isn't the fall of a few officers, this is the beginning of accountability." She gathered her papers into a neat stack. "The court will prepare for sentencing. The defendant, now former Officer Brian O'Connor, will be returned for judgment once federal custody is secured." Then, as if remembering something, she looked back toward the gallery. "For those of you watching, write this down carefully. Justice doesn't come quickly. It comes when you stop protecting what's broken." Naomi stood, the robe shifting as she stepped down from the bench. The bailiff whispered, "Should I adjourn, Your Honor?" She paused at the doorway, then said softly, "No, leave it open, let them sit with the silence." And she walked out. No applause, no cheers, just the hollow, echoing quiet of a system finally beginning to crack. The courtroom felt colder when Naomi returned for the final session. The morning sunlight had shifted across the high windows, turning gold to gray. The air was still, as if even the building was holding its breath. O'Connor sat at the defendant's table again, this time in an orange detention jumpsuit. His wrists were cuffed, his eyes darted around the room, searching for a single familiar face. There were none. Rodriguez and Hale were gone. The prosecutor had been replaced by a federal attorney from the Department of Justice. The cameras were still rolling. Naomi took her seat behind the bench. She didn't look at O'Connor right away. Instead, she read through the papers before her, methodical, precise. When she finally lifted her head, the room quieted like a church before a sermon. "This court has reviewed all evidence and testimony concerning the defendant Brian O'Connor," she began. "The charges include felony assault on a federal officer, perjury, falsification of evidence, and violation of civil rights under color of law." Her voice was even, each word perfectly measured. "The facts are clear, the footage is irrefutable, the record of misconduct is extensive. This court finds the defendant guilty on all counts." The words fell like stone against the floor. O'Connor's head dropped. His lawyer whispered something, but Naomi spoke over it. "Before I issue sentencing, Mr. O'Connor, you have the right to speak." He hesitated. His mouth opened, then closed again. His voice cracked when he finally found it. "Your Honor, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was following procedure. I was just—" Naomi cut him off gently. "Procedure doesn't require hatred." He stared at the table. She waited a beat, then continued. "You said you were just doing your job. So was I. The difference is that my job protects people. Yours destroyed them." Her tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. The quiet made it heavier. She opened the file in front of her. His record, his history, every complaint, every settlement, every name. "For 15 years you walked into neighborhoods where people feared the sight of your badge. You humiliated grandmothers. You cuffed children. You laughed while you did it." She flipped another page. 47 complaints. 47 times the system had a chance to stop you, and didn't. Her voice softened, almost mournful. "You are not an isolated mistake. You are what happens when arrogance meets authority, and accountability looks the other way." The words didn't just address him. They were aimed at everyone. The department, the city, the nation watching through screens. Naomi leaned slightly forward. This court sentences you to 35 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. A low murmur rippled through the gallery. She didn't pause. In addition, you are ordered to cooperate fully with the Department of Justice's investigation into departmental misconduct. Every case you touched will be reopened. Every victim will be notified. O'Connor's shoulders shook. Please, Your Honor. I'm sorry. I didn't know, she said quietly. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you finally met someone you couldn't control. She let the silence sit there deep and long, until the only sound was his breathing, shallow, uneven, breaking. Then she spoke again, softer now, almost reflective. 15 years ago, you took an oath to serve and protect, to act without bias, to honor the law. You broke that oath every time you saw a black face and thought suspect before citizen. Her eyes lowered for a moment, and when she looked up again, they were steady, not angry, but unbearably clear. Justice isn't vengeance, Mr. O'Connor, it's consequence. And today for once consequence has caught up to you. She reached for her gavel. This sentence isn't just yours. It belongs to every officer who thinks a badge is a shield from accountability. It belongs to every system that confuses silence with order. The gavel hit once, sharp, final. Court is adjourned. The sound echoed long after it should have faded. The bailiff stepped forward, guiding O'Connor to his feet. He didn't resist this time. His eyes were red, his face hollow. As he was led past her bench, he stopped, searching her face for something. Anger, triumph, pity. There was none, only truth. Your Honor, he whispered, you'll never understand what it's like out there. Naomi didn't even blink. No, she said quietly, you'll never understand what it's like in here, to live by rules that you only enforce on others. He was taken away. The doors closed behind him with a heavy metallic thud. Naomi sat for a long moment, alone in the courtroom. She looked down at the papers scattered before her, case files, complaints, evidence, names, so many names. Some had been ignored for years, not anymore. Her hand rested on the gavel. She didn't lift it again. Instead she whispered, almost to herself, justice may be blind, but she sees everything. Eventually, she exhaled long and tired, the kind of breath that carries both pain and release. Outside the window the sun had returned, spilling light across the seal of the court. The same steps where she'd been humiliated now bathed in gold. Naomi smoothed the folds of her robe, and walked toward the exit. For the first time all day she smiled. Small, quiet, human. Justice had spoken. And this time, she'd made sure the world was listening. Atlanta was warmer now, the kind of warmth that clung to the skin, soft and forgiving. The trees along Peachtree Street had turned green again, and for the first time in a long time, people walked a little slower, smiled a little more. The city breathed differently. 6 months had gone by since the ruling that shook the country, not just the city. 6 months since the day Judge Naomi Carter turned a courtroom into a mirror and forced America to look at itself. In that time everything had changed. Not all at once, but piece by piece, the way a wound scabs, then scars, then stops hurting. The old police headquarters downtown had been torn down. The new one rose in its place, all glass and light, a building the mayor said was meant to let the public see in. Reporters called it symbolic. Locals called it about damn time. 12 officers had been fired. 4 had been charged. The rest were being retrained under federal oversight. Every Monday morning a small committee of civilians and federal monitors met inside that building, watching footage, reading reports, rewriting policies line by line. For the first time in decades, complaints were being taken seriously. For the first time people believed something might actually change. The numbers had already shifted. Fewer stops, fewer violent incidents, more citizens willing to come forward. The silence that once protected power had cracked. Across the city, posters had begun to appear, stapled to light poles, taped on storefronts, drawn in marker on brick walls. A woman in black robes, standing straight, eyes steady. Below her face, in bold letters, "Justice is not blind, she just needed her eyes open." No one knew who started it. No one needed to. The message had outgrown the name. In a small cafe near Auburn Avenue, 4 law students sat around a table cluttered with laptops and half-empty mugs. The TV above the counter showed a live broadcast, the volume turned just loud enough to hear over the hiss of the espresso machine. Breaking news: Judge Naomi Carter receives Presidential Medal of Civic Honor. The camera cut to Washington, D.C. Naomi stood at a podium, draped in her black robe with the gold trim. The same robe, the same steady hands. "Justice delayed is justice denied," she said, her voice measured and clear. "But justice delivered, even when it's late, changes everything. Not just for one case, but for everyone who thought the system would never listen." The applause that followed wasn't loud. It wasn't meant to be. It sounded like respect, not spectacle. History, not performance. Back in Atlanta, the courthouse had a new name carved into its stone archway: the Justice Carter Federal Courthouse. Tourists sometimes stopped to take pictures, but most who passed under that arch came for something simpler: a hearing, a filing, a chance to speak and be heard. For once people walked into that building without fear that the walls themselves were watching in judgment. The marble floors gleamed, the flags were clean, but what changed most was the silence. Not heavy anymore, but calm. At sunset, Naomi walked down those same courthouse steps. The same marble that had once been stained with her blood now reflected the fading light like nothing had ever touched it. The city hummed below her, buses wheezing, vendors shouting, laughter echoing off the street. She stopped halfway down and looked around. Same skyline, same courthouse, same traffic, but not the same city. She slipped her hands into her coat pockets and smiled faintly. Normal, she thought, was the victory. Judge Carter. The voice pulled her from her thoughts. A woman stood a few steps below, holding the hand of a little boy in a school uniform. Her voice trembled just a little. "You probably don't remember me, my brother. He was one of the cases your ruling reopened. They cleared his name last week." Naomi blinked. "Your brother's name?" "Marcus Boyd." Naomi's expression softened. She remembered the file: 17 when he was arrested, 21 when he was sentenced. A life interrupted by lies. "He's home now," the woman said. Her eyes filled but her voice didn't break. "He got a job again. He's happy, thank you." Naomi smiled gently. "He got himself home. I just opened the door." The woman nodded, squeezed Naomi's hand, and walked away with the boy. He waved once before disappearing into the evening crowd. Naomi watched until they were gone, then turned back toward the city. The streetlights blinked on one by one. The hum of traffic deepened into night. For the first time in months, the air smelled clean, like rain before it falls. Behind her, the courthouse doors shut with a low echoing thud. For the first time that sound didn't feel heavy. It sounded like peace. Later that evening, Naomi walked through the marble lobby alone. The corridors were quiet, except for her heels clicking softly against the floor. She stopped in front of a plaque, newly mounted on the wall. Her name was etched in bronze beneath the courthouse seal. Below it a short inscription: "To those who choose to see what others ignore, and act anyway." She ran her fingers along the engraved words, then let them rest there for a moment. A small quiet breath escaped her. "That's all it ever takes," she whispered. The words hung in the air like a prayer. Outside, a small group had gathered by the steps, mostly students, a few older locals, each holding a candle. They weren't protesting this time. They were reading aloud, taking turns reciting lines from the Constitution. A young woman, maybe 19, stood at the front. Her hands shook, but her voice didn't. "And establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense." Her words echoed softly off the stone. The candles flickered in the wind but refused to go out. Naomi stood in the doorway, unnoticed. She didn't interrupt. She just watched, the faint smile returning to her lips. When the girl finished reading, the group fell silent. One by one, they placed their candles on the courthouse steps, dozens of tiny flames, glowing against the marble. Naomi turned and began to walk home. The night air was cool now, carrying the hum of the city, cars, laughter, the distant echo of street musicians. Atlanta felt alive again, alive and listening. She walked past a newsstand. A headline caught her eye: "Environmental whistleblower missing. Federal agencies deny involvement." Another story, another silence. She stopped for a moment,
reading the fine print beneath the fold, a name she recognized, a witness she'd seen listed once in a sealed case. Her fingers brushed the edge of the paper, the light above the stand flickered, the vendor, half asleep, didn't look up. Naomi folded the paper neatly, slipped it into her bag, and kept walking. Her heels echoed down the empty street, not rushed, not hesitant, just steady. Behind her, the candles at the courthouse burned low, their wax pooling together on the steps, tiny rivers of light, feeding into the dark. Ahead the city stretched wide and waiting, and somewhere beyond it, another case, another truth, was already calling her name. Justice never sleeps, it only changes its address.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.